everyone. This is the first movie for Excel Chapter 1, Pause and Practice. So I started us off here at the Blackboard. We're in Lessons, Excel Chapter 1 assignments. Here is our Pause and Practice instructions. So as I can see, there are 4 pause and practices in this chapter, and I need to start with Paradise Lakes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and download that file, and it's in my tray because I'm using Chrome. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and I want to take a few minutes just to introduce you to Excel. So what we're looking at here is the basic Excel sheet, and you're going to be familiar with the ribbon for the most part. It is very similar to your Word ones, but one area that's different is the formatting of new numbers and things like your page layout. They're very similar, but there are some changes. So the big one on the home is the number format. All right, so underneath the ribbon then, if we take a look at some of these things, right here where it says A1, this is called the name box. Okay, so this would be the location that you would look at to identify where you are in your system. It can have the name of what is called a cell. This is called a cell. A cell is an intersection of a column and a row. Columns are always identified with letters. Rows are always identified with numbers. The intersection of a column and a row is a cell, and it's addressed by the letter number combination. So I'm in D4, so that's what we would say. I'm in cell D4. My active cell where I'm at is D4. So you want to just pay attention to that, and then when you can name ranges or individual cells, you can use this box to do that. If you turn to the right, you'll notice that there's 2 grayed out buttons, an X and a check mark. So the X is like a cancel, and the check mark is like an enter, accepting, right? So I'm going to do a little experiment for you. I'm just going to go to a blank sheet, and I'm going to type a 100 in cell A1. Notice that these are no longer gray. The minute that you start typing or editing, these will pop up and make it active. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit my enter key. And look at where my active cell is now. I'm down at A2. So enter will keep you in the same column and move you down a row. So now I'm going to put 200 here, but instead of hitting enter, I'm going to hit my tab key and look at where my active cell is here. It's in B2. So by tabbing, I'm moving across to the row, changing columns. So now I'm going to put a 300, and in this time, instead of hitting something on the keyboard, I'm going to use the check mark, which is the enter. And it accepts it, and it look at what it does. It keeps it in the same cell. So based on how you're entering your values, you would either use your enter to go down if you're putting data in a column, tab to move across if you're entering data in a row, or if you want to stay in the same cell, perhaps because you want to copy it, you could use the check mark, or any of those 3. So now I'm going to type a 50. And look, if I do the X, that is the cancel. That is the same as on my keyboard if I hit my escape key. Okay? So kind of get used to those things. And now I'm going to pause this movie for a minute. I'm going to do something on my screen. Okay, while I was paused, I put some numbers in here. So one of the things that I want you to be aware of is that what you're looking at here isn't necessarily what is in the cell. So if I look at D1, this formula bar, this bar right here, I want you to start looking up here. This will tell you what's actually in the cell. So that actually has a 100. This actually has a 200. So in other words, I just typed those numbers in there, right? So look, 100, 100, but look if I go here. This does not have a 200. This has a formula, and I know it's a formula because it begins with an equal sign. That's what tells Excel that it's a formula. And I'm saying take the contents of E1 and add it to the contents of E2 and put it in this cell. So now if I change this to a 200, this doesn't change because I just typed it in. This one, if I change it, that formula updates the reference. So you always want to look up here. All right, let me pause. Okay, here's another example. So if you look at this, you might think Mandalinage, my last name is in column F, right? But if I put my cursor on F5 and I look at my address bar, there's nothing in there. There's nothing in that cell. If I go back to E5, you'll see that the entire contents of my name really resides in this cell. It just kind of fell over. But if I go and I put something in here, the word apple, it replaces, because now F5 has the word apple in it, but it looks like Mandalinage is gone. But once again, you have to look up here. If I go back to that cell, it still has that contents, and I can make it large enough to display it. Okay, so really get used to using this formula bar to identify where you're at. All right, so now let's go back to sheet 1. I'm going to get rid of sheet 2 because that was just my little demo. So back to sheet 1. So the other thing that you want to understand is the difference between labels and values, okay? So oops, too many. Let's say that's somebody's phone number, right? Would you think that that is a label or a value? Is this a label or a value? Is this a label or a value? Well, a label is what is considered alphanumeric, right? It could be letters, it could be numbers, but it has no numeric value to it. A value is something that, if I had a number line in the room, it would have a place on the number line. It has a numeric value. So all of these are values because they all have numeric values. This is a label. This is some phone number. You're never going to add two phone numbers together. Okay, another example would be a zip code. So that's a really good example because it's comprised of all numbers, but in this case they really act as text because 44614 is not 44,614. It's the zip code for Canal Fulton, 44614. So we're never going to take the class's zip codes and average them or add them together to get our total zip code. That has no value to it. It is not numeric in nature. So another one that confuses people is, let's say, August 14th, 2018. Would you consider that to be a value or a label? So if you think of the test as if it's a value, can you do math on it? Is it something that you can do meaningful math on? And so this is a date, and you know what? You can do math on it, right? So that's the date that I am recording this video. I could take my date of birth and I could subtract those two values, and it would tell you how many days I've lived. We don't want to do that because it would be way too depressing. But we could do that. So you can't just assume that something that has letters in it is not a value. And you can't assume that something that's all numbers is a value, right? So the test is this something that you would do math on, that you could do math on? Does it have a numeric value? So that's a big thing. All right, so let's go ahead and actually get started on the first pause and practice. Where am I at? Oh, you know what? I'm going to stop this movie and start in movie 2. All right, guys, thank you.